Test one, two, three. You can hear me now? All right. For whatever reason, my microphone isn't working on my desktop here. So I'm double joined with my phone. Okay. Don't need that. There you go. All right. Well, welcome everybody. And we're going to get started here with some announcements, if you were, some information. And then we will move forward with some discussion. All right, so first of all, if you haven't done so, please put your name into the chat so I can record the attendance. I did send out an announcement this morning related to this morning, but all of you are doing the first part of the announcement in that you're participating in this morning's meet. Excuse me. I do know there's a small handful who are actually still in session. So I'm giving them the option of either writing the journal, or when I post this video, they can watch this meet and then they can send me an email that they viewed the meet. All right. I took a scan at some of the submitted work. Not all of the lessons have been submitted yet. So this is a good opportunity. I haven't graded anything yet. So this is a good opportunity again to review. So the assignment by design was to develop a lesson, record a lesson, and then submit the lesson. Some of you did take advantage of that. We also gave you the option to do a mock classroom if you didn't have the opportunity for your students. Some of you wanted to get some colleagues or whatnot, that would be acceptable as well. And then the final option would be to take a lesson from earlier in your experience and take a lesson more currently and compare and contrast those lessons and thereby identify where your learning environment is positive. Identify where in the lesson you have demonstrated differentiation, where in the lesson are you encouraging collaboration, and where are you addressing behavioral and social needs. You know, and I also hope you understand that we're doing this for a mental exercise. Certainly, each and every day, 180 days a year, you aren't filling in some block on some lesson plan about how you're going to address behavioral and social emotional needs. First of all, the students aren't going to tell you. They're going to show up with the behavioral and social emotional needs, and those things are going to change from time to time. But it is a good mental exercise to go through that. So any question, comment, or concern on this slide before I move forward? Okay. There would be no question, comment, or concern about the video announcement. So IT Scott, I am using my phone as my speaker. The audio works, but this speaker doesn't. So maybe after this Google Meet, I'll turn my stuff over to you. Okay? Okay. All right. Thank you. That's my idea of troubleshooting as the director. I just call the IT guy and have him figure it out. Okay. So we are in week 7 and we are looking at we are looking at assessing and evaluating instruction. So effective assessment practices ensure that all students, regardless of their, well, first of all, before I go on to this, if you have submitted your work already, any question for me regarding what was submitted? Because I saw a couple different things. I saw a few things relative to the assignment as written. I saw some videos made of the compare and contrast, which would be acceptable. For those of you who submitted, any question, comment, or clarification on your submission? Okay. All right. All right. So as far as our assessments go, let me set the table in this fashion. So I bet if we were social studies teachers or English teachers and we were giving a test, right, which would be an assessment, okay? All of you have taken those types of tests. We can imagine the paper pencil exercise, maybe some matching, multiple choice, true, false, maybe some short answer. And for a long time, that would have been considered an appropriate summative assessment. But in our world, that is but a piece. So in our world, you need to do a lot of performance-based assessment, which ironically is what Jay McTighe would call authentic assessment. I think if you do any type of study about curriculum design relative to Jay McTighe and Grant Wiggins and understanding by design, you will see that when it comes to assessments and they talk about authentic assessment, CTE plays its hands right into that. It'd be one thing for a student to be able to explain how to do a brake job. It'd be another thing for the student to pull the brakes and rotors. I don't know. Are we turning rotors now? Are we not turning rotors? That's conversation seems to go back and forth. 50-50, huh, Chad? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. You know, I would imagine for old school sake that it's still probably a skill you teach and have them know. But again, you know, so you could see that there could be, I'm going to call it a typical assessment. Please compare and contrast the benefits of turning rotors versus replacing rotors. But there also needs to be that performance piece where the student actually does it. What is the balance in your classroom between paper pencil tests, because there is a role for that. Let's not forget there's also the NOCTI with the written performance. So what is the balance in your classes relative to assessment, traditional versus what I'm going to call authentic, which is performance-based? Go ahead, Emily.
So I think it kind of depends on the class. Like for my class, we obviously have skills, but at the same
I'm
time,
sorry, elaborate again. I forget what your shop is.
oh, I'm sorry, healthcare careers. So
Right.
I mean, we're pretty book heavy in my class, so there's a lot of testing and things like that. We do have the skill too, but you know.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head there, right? It is going to be totally dependent upon the zip code. I would definitely hope that a healthcare worker would have a deep knowledge base before they would be able to perform anything in the realm of healthcare, even if it's simple vital signs. So, no, I would say you're right on the money. Others, the balance between traditional assessments and performance-based assessments.
So I'll speak on that. I actually wonder what you recommend. You know, how much of a balance, especially in a baking atmosphere.
Well, that's interesting. Let me elaborate on that a little bit. Okay. If you give but one assessment, that is a snapshot of a moment in time. Over the course of 9 weeks, over a course of a semester, over a course of 2 semesters, i.e. 1 year, you should have a portfolio of assessments on your kids. And this is what I mean. There is no doubt that we need to build the foundation before we get to the first floor, before we get to the roof. So, what knowledge, before we get to the skills, because we always talk about knowledge and skills, but you can't perform a skill if you have no knowledge on what that skill needs to do. So, relative to your question, I would also encourage you to, if you so wish, I'm going to give my guy again, Jay McTighe, and I'm going to, when it comes to differentiate instruction, for me, it starts with Carol Ann Tomlinson. They wrote a book called Integrating Differentiated Instruction with Understanding by Design. The slogan underneath it was connecting content with kids. Chapter 8 is about grading and reporting. Matter of fact, let me see if I can pull this up. Yes, I can. All right. I'm going to go here. I talk to myself as I go through these damn things. All right. Yeah, let me present something else. All right. So, in both of my places, both here at the CTC many moons ago and at Laurel a few moons ago, we took a whole year. And part of our professional development was this book, chapter by chapter. As a matter of fact, it was on an old system called Moodle. I don't know if any of you have been around enough to know that, but it was a predecessor to these types of formats. And I don't know how self-selective you get to be in your professional development, but going to grading, unless they can do it and tell you why, they haven't been properly assessed. Let's go to your baking example. Okay. So there is a lot of background math knowledge in culinary. Fractions, proportions, ratios. Okay. So students think, well, I'm not a good math student. Well, you obviously are if you're in culinary. You obviously have to have proportions, ratios, etc. So, Colleen, getting to your example, use the philosophy of a portfolio. There's that role of a paper pencil test. But they must perform. And I would say the same to a social studies teacher. So let me use that example. So it's very easy for a social studies test because we all took them in high school, right? Matching multiple. So what does a historian do? What does somebody who's analyzing social studies do? Okay. So social topic, research, write or present. So I believe authentic assessment in a social studies class ought to be taking big ideas. So for example, in America today, an issue, a social studies issue would be immigration. You can state a big idea. Immigration is a natural part of a country. That in and of itself is true. Okay. Now, if you want to debate legal versus illegal immigration. Then as a social scientist, research, why are people advocating for legal immigration? Why are people advocating for more open immigration? And what is your conclusion? To me, that's what a social scientist would do to be authentic. In our role here, again, CTE leads itself to authenticity, but you can't be authentic if you don't have the knowledge in order to perform the skill. Back in our traditional classroom, we just shouldn't say some blanket opinion and then not be able to justify it with empirical facts in order to get to a conclusion. So as far as a balance, Colleen, that's about as close as I'm going to get to say. But what I will tell you is the following. We all have a tendency to give credit for things other than assessment. I don't know if any of you have things like work ethic grades. I don't know. Right. So, and we put those in there because it's the reality of the situation with high school kids. If you don't give them some points for something, they're not going to do it. But understand this, the most pure assessment of what they know are your summative assessments. Every time you put something else in that counts, you are diluting summative assessment. I'll give you an example. On the academic side here at Lawrence County Career and Technical Center, we do a 60-30-10. 60% of the grades are weighted as summative assessment, right? 30% are in class and 10% IE is independent or homework. Well, you can imagine how many kids around here do homework. So in any event, and we expect, now we're on an AB schedule. So in a 45-day period, they have 22 or 23 days of the shop, or 22, 23 days of class, right? And the academic classes are about 67 minutes long. So that really doesn't give a lot of days for assessment. So we expect one type, and it could be even a 10-point value, one type of summative assessment, because we only believe in 22 or 23 days, you might have one or two end of unit whatevers in a traditional class. On the CTE side, we also weight categories as far as work ethic, knowledge and skills, etc. So it's just not a total points type of thing. So I don't know what your schools do, but you are free, absent their directive, to weight categories within your grade book. And I would, as an experiment, go back to last year's grade book. How much of the class was based on either traditional assessment or performance-based assessment, and how much of the class was based on I was here today? So I gave you a lot there, Colleen, but I couldn't give you a little based upon what you asked. Okay, others, your experience, traditional assessment versus performance-based assessment. Go ahead, Chad.
I would say since it was my first year, I was probably, I want to say upwards of like a 70-30 split. 30% being actual testing in the classroom and the 70 being hands-on in the shop. And it is something that I explained to like all the students coming back next year. Like you guys got me. You got it a little easier the first year as I'm figuring this out, but it is definitely something I want to implement more of, having actual more frequent assessment, 10, 15 question, biweekly assessments, just to make sure they're staying on track. And that way, when they get to the NOCD, which mine's 195 questions, they don't go from nothing to, how do I have 200 questions I got to handle? So,
Well, here's something else relative. First of all, let me give you an amen, because I'm going through that same thought process with this course. I'm thinking how I went through this course for the first time, and then how am I going to prepare myself to go through the course the second time? I'm thinking about what changes to make. And then I'm going to give you a little coaching analogy. In coaching, practice like you play like you practice. How are you going to expect your students to do 195 multiple choice NOCD if they've never practiced paper pencil, right? So it goes to that balance. So I think anytime we take some time to reflect, analyze, and then implement for the following year, I think we're continuing to grow our craft, and we are developing a teaching career rather than teaching the same year multiple times. I would also recommend that when you do your more paper pencil tests, and the following can be for credit or not for credit, but you include some spiraling back of things you thought that they did already, because what you'll find is if they don't use it, they lose it, particularly the knowledge and skills, because students often associate memorization with knowledge, and those are not synonyms. So if we really want them to know and understand, we need to cycle back. It wouldn't be a bad idea at the end of the first 9 weeks to cycle back a few concepts that you presented in the beginning. Do they still have it, as well as the new, and keep that philosophy moving forward. Others, traditional assessments versus performance-based, and I'm going to throw in the balance portion. Go ahead. Who got their hand up? Diane, Steve.
Yes, it's Diane. I do some very untraditional kind of assessments. I let the students make mistakes or set them up to make mistakes. For instance, one day we did roller sets, and I actually made a list of things to do wrong in the roller sets so that they could actually see why I'm telling them don't do this, or this is why you do it. So that worked. That helped me.
So long as the roller sets, I assume, are on the mannequin and not a real student.
Yeah, I make sure I never do anything that would actually hurt anyone. That's like calling, I don't know, in baking, if you did a recipe where they needed to use baking soda, instead they use baking powder, whatever, to make a difference.
And since our cosmetologist has spoken as well, let's not forget the science. And I don't know if you've ever seen what a cosmetologist needs to know on a state board relative to physical anatomy and the nerves in the hand and everything else. So I think all of you have a balance. I think all of you may early tend to do what Chad did and lean heavy towards performance-based, where on the academic side, they would lean heavily on traditional assessments, and we're realizing where we need to do what. I'm intrigued by Diane's setting them up, if you will, relative to knowing that they're going to make a common mistake. I mean, I bet we can all think of things within our programs that are common stumbling blocks. And I would venture to say sometimes we learn more from mistakes than we actually do doing it right the first time. Um, I'm trying to golf a little more this summer. I'm learning from a lot of mistakes. So I think there's also, you don't always have to be successful to learn. Now, ultimately, if we're going to be a completer in our program, they'll have to do it right eventually, right? But nothing says that they have to be proficient at it the first time. And nothing says that they can't make common mistakes and let them make those mistakes again with a guiding hand. And then in the end, know why that was wrong. So now I know what I need to do right. Other thoughts relative to that? Emily, go ahead.
So I have a question.
Sure.
So one of my teacher meetings this year, um, I have a student that this is like really awful to say, but she's just not going to make it in the healthcare world.
Yeah.
And one of her problems is no matter what I do, or no matter how many times I show her or work with other people, or no matter what, the skills, she like just completely annihilates them every single time. And the advice I was given was, maybe you need to change the way that you grade your skills so that that really shows on her grading, like the end of the 9 weeks, like, okay, she's completely failing her skills no matter what you do. I was just curious as to like how other people grade their skills. So, what I was doing was, okay, each skill is worth 10 points. You can do it however many times you need to until you get it right, and then you'll get 10 out of 10. Until then, you're not getting a grade for it until it's completed incorrectly. So I was just curious what other people did as far as how they graded their skills.
Well, let me throw a term at this conversation first. Is so Emily just gave example of mastery learning, right? The assessment is there, but you cannot move on until it is mastered. And I think, quite frankly, we might all give an amen to that. But does anyone care to respond to Emily? I'm going to reserve my thoughts for a moment until I don't want to lead the conversation one way or another. Anyone want to speak to what Emily said? How do you grade your skills? Are some of you doing get it or not get it? I can't believe that everyone's doing mastery, although they do need to master it at some point.
So in my class, in the baking class, if they have recipes assigned and they're all different levels, I have a basic rubric that I use for skills. And I'll go around from student to student and just, they know they get 24 points. So, and they know what I'm looking for every time I see their finished product. That's how I get their skills grade. And then I tie each recipe to one of the tasks on my task list so that I know they're covering that task. And then, of course, in my grade book under masteries, when I assign an assignment, I can link the task to I can link the recipe to the task number, and then it goes into mastery. So that's how I kind of keep track of it.
Anybody else?
So I kind of went through the task list with my OAC committee, and really kind of dove in and, okay, out of these tasks, which ones did we all feel were the non-negotiables, the ones that they need to know, i.e., correctly installing a wheel on a car so it doesn't fall off. So we went through, and those ones I weigh a little heavier when I'm grading. They have multiple chances to complete it correctly. But those non-negotiables, they need demonstrate proficiency and mastery of. The non-negotiables, if they get it and they understand the concept of it, maybe there's some fine motor skills there don't have quite yet, and that's what's preventing them. We kind of go that one as like a case by case basis. One of our tasks is measuring the brake pedal height. In 20 years, I've never done that. So we go through the task. When they're done, I explain to them, did they understand the concept? But if their measurement was a hair off, it's not going to make or break them. But when they come to torquing that wheel, it's got to be 100% by the book, or we have an issue.
So the electrical occupations teacher here, in his level 1 course, has 20 introductory assignments that all are tied to developing a basic skill. Some of it is just learning how to read a wiring diagram and then following those instructions. But when you were saying, Chad, about those must-haves, that's the parallel I drew, and I think we all can point to those must-haves. Emily, I'm curious. Does this example student have an IEP, or are they regular ed?
She has an IEP.
Okay. All right. So here's no, it's bring your child to Google Meet Day. You're okay.
I'm sorry. I'm here by myself.
No, that's wonderful. It doesn't bother me not one bit. If someone's sitting there petting their dog, go for it. It doesn't matter. I'm probably the only one who's sitting in the office today. It looks like all of you who care to share, Diane, she got the ocean in the background or something there. I don't know, you're trying to rub it in. But in any event, Emily, I'm going to, oh, look, come on, Diane. We are all enjoying that background. Thank you. So in any event, Emily, let me discuss, if I were in your situation as your administrator. So if they had a 504, that means they're regular ed. They're on the same path, metacognition. All a 504 means is if we give them some support, they ought to be able to achieve at the same level as everybody else. A 504 is not an IEP. A 504 is regular ed. Now we have the students who are regular ed without a 504. We understand we're going to give them these mastery tests, and they get to redo until they come to mastery. When it comes to an IEP, I look at it relative to, and I'm going to share screen again here. Okay. Have any of you seen, I don't know where in the studies Point Park addresses this. Have any of you seen the response to instruction framework, RTI? Okay, I'm seeing some nods, right? So I'm going to go with Emily's example. Emily has these master tests, 85% tier 1. Emily has these master tests. Not everybody gets it. She's doing some small groups, depending upon what skill we're measuring, meeting with kids who need support in each individual skill. There we go, tier 2, right? So it ought to be an 85, 10, 5. Now we got to get where the rubber meets the road. So we have 95%. I'm going to throw something at you. We're a country of over 330 million. We don't even have everybody breathing without assistance. Think about that. So if not everybody breathes independently on their own, is every student who ever walks in going to get to proficiency? Only if it's a bar that you have to bend down to reach. there are certain standards, be it culinary, be it health assistant, be it cosmetology, be it state inspection, there are certain non-negotiable standards. So Emily, to the situation that you're in, I would look at this student's IEP. I would look at the goals and objectives. Are they aligned appropriately to the student's disability? And then, if they are, great, we need to look at something. But if this student is never getting to mastery in everything, I'm going to look at tier 3 here. Tier 3 is replacement. Let me give you a different example as we're going down this journey here before I make a conclusion. On the academic side, we have tier 1, English class, 85% in there. Tier 2, whether they're regular ed or special ed, they don't do good on the Keystone, we're sending them the remediation, right? They're going to do Study Island. They're going to get a little extra support. They're going to get a little extra tutoring. Then they're going to come back and take the test, and a lot of them will do well on it. All right. Well, I have English language arts class here for some special ed students who, despite any support, will not be successful in the regular curriculum. So they get what's called language exclamation point. Not that you care, but that is a replacement curriculum. It's not a grade level curriculum. My concern, Emily, to your example is, and I don't know this student or have his IEP, is, but if they are well below grade level and they are in a technical heavy course, they might be a completer in the sense of, do they do over 50% of the work, and do they do somehow perform on an octi? Maybe. But are they going to earn certifications that they can apply into the healthcare field? The reality is they might not. I get on the special ed administrators I work with saying, listen, every special ed kid who has a cat doesn't mean they're going to be a veterinarian. I really, really harp on the transition grid. And by the way, the transition grid impacts all of you. Starting at age 14, in an IEP, there must be transition. What are they going to do? What are they going to do after school? So I'm going to Emily's student again. If Emily knows that this student is getting mastery level instruction and redos and remediation, and Emily, I assume that the special ed teacher in your school is working with you?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. I don't know if you're doing flashcards, whatever you're doing, right, to give them multiple opportunities outside the classroom to learn. If this student just cannot do the mastery level work, they probably aren't going to attain some of the higher level certifications available through the zip code. But again, that doesn't mean that if we look at their transition, that we can't have an appropriate transition and make them successful beyond our walls. But, it's a lot easier to say, I have a cat and I'm going to be a veterinarian, than to say, you know what, Mom, Dad, I'm not seeing it. Can we look at something? Maybe a groomer. And, we're going to do shampoo animals and do toenails and whatever else. Relative than to being a veterinarian. Again, that's not your zip code and that's not your kid. But if you already have a mastery level authentic assessment within your program and you're remediating and giving multiple opportunities, again, we don't all breathe on our own. There is a place for replacement curriculum. But also when we use replacement curriculum, we are saying it is not as rigorous, it is not as relevant, and it is not on grade level. Now, I said a ton there. Anybody have any question, comment, or concern relative to their own experience? No. And there are other administrators who maybe are a little more afraid of that IEP. I think the following. If you consistently communicate, now maybe I've said this before to this class, between the classroom teacher, the case manager, and the family, you can hold those special education students accountable to what they've done. But if any of that breaks down, you're going to lose. And rather than having that cycle as an administrator and keeping that cycle and being a part of that cycle, it does get easy sometimes on this side to say, just give them whatever and let's move on. But I can't do that in good conscience, and neither should you. But you got to do what your administrator tells you to as well. Emily, I don't know if I helped you there a bit, but that's my answer.
Thank you very much. That is very helpful.
I mean, I hope you, like me, know that you're in the right spot and know that teaching is for you and public education is for you, and dealing with adolescent teens who are a handful is for you. But then you've got to build up your own knowledge and skills, hence courses like these and other things, in order to be more effective in the classroom. And what we're doing in this moment of time is going to be less effective 5 years from now. Okay, how do I know? Well, I'm looking 5 years behind. Now, a lot of what we do is still effective, and maybe some of the tools change. The philosophy of a commitment to kids needs to stay the same. But please, please, please look to be the person who has a 20 or 30-year teaching career. Don't look to be the person that taught the same year 20 or 30 times. Just before I forget, some of you joined on at various times. Please make sure if your name is not in the chat. I think we have more than 13 here, and I only have 13 names in the chat. Please make sure your names are in the chat relative to attendance. All right. Okay. Okay. I got this in an email. I don't know. You're probably more familiar with this than I. We encourage you to complete your course evaluation prior to the close of the survey. Opens June 13th, closes June 30th. The students will receive email reminders with a link to the survey every 3 days until it's completed. Have you gotten any of those yet? Okay. All right. Again, that whole process is new to me. Okay. All right. I want to reference the syllabus here if you give me one moment. All right. So next week, we will be looking at the reflection on learning. and then we'll be that'll be our last meet next Monday morning, correct? Okay. Having said this, here as we get down to our next to last meet, again, I want to continue to thank you. I'm enjoying this journey. I'm enjoying your work. And it's been a little reinvigorating for myself, and I owe you a degree of thanks as well. I just appreciate your conversations, and it's making your submissions all that much more worth it. When I went through my letter of eligibility class to be a superintendent, I was on a format online, but we never did this. We never did any. I couldn't tell you one of my professors. I couldn't tell you, it was a reading, an assignment on Tuesday, a reading, an assignment for Friday. We all had to respond to the reading, put our own response, respond to two of our, so I don't even know who I went to school with, so at least some of you here with names and faces. I got to ask Diane, where are you this morning?
Where am I?
Yeah.
On the deck at the pool.
Oh, well, your background's beautiful. Way to fake us. Oh, that's your pool in your backyard.
Yes.
All right. So first Monday in July, we're going to be at Diane's house for Bloody Marys and mimosas. Maybe Colleen going to make some tapas.
Sounds great.
Okay. Question, comment, concern for me. Again, if you've submitted go ahead, Colleen.
I have a question. So the week 7, the assignment that's due next week. So I'm kind of waiting for your feedback on the recorded lesson so that I can finish this paper. Is that what I'm supposed to be doing?
Yeah. And, like I said, some of them have been in. I'm going to take a good portion of today to try to give those things the due diligence for those who have submitted. And then we'll go from there. So give me till about lunch tomorrow, and then we can go from there. Any other questions about anything coming up? Okay. I hope everybody has their name in the chat. I'm going to write that down for attendance, and then we will go from there. Anything else this morning? All right. I'm going to stop the recording. I'm going to thank you for coming, and enjoy your summer. See you next week.